All right, it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone, as we start to have some people trickling in. Um,
Hey,
I, I can see, I can just see David. So there's three of us here, but I'm looking over on YouTube. I'm trying to make sure that you have all three of us in the screen. Okay, so I think as we start to speak, different faces will pop up on the screen, so you all get to see a mix of us. So, as people start to join, I'll just do a little self intro for each of us, as well as an intro about this event and what we're trying to do here today. So, this is Remote Dev Live. And we are all from Arc.dev. So, probably some of you are part of the community. And if you're not, we welcome you to join. So, this event is supposed to kind of bring our community to life. Our community is developers from all over the world, remote developers. Looking for jobs or currently in jobs and looking to grow in their careers. So we're going to be talking about things in this event tonight or today for some of you, that hopefully will help you during your career at whatever stage you are at. So we welcome you all, and if you wouldn't mind, if you're joining us, let us know where you're coming from today. You can leave a comment in the chat, and if you have questions along the way, please feel free to drop your questions in, and we'll answer them as they come along. So I've just spoken quite a bit. I'll finish up my little self intro and I'll throw it over to my colleagues. But I'm Christine, the head of marketing, and I am currently based in Taiwan. But I've updated my background here today to kind of show my hometown, someplace I haven't been for over 2 years. My hometown is Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm also a remote worker, although I'm not a developer, I'm a marketer. I do understand, very much what it's like to work remotely, and I'll be sharing my experience as a remote worker, as a manager, and as a marketer, because I think these things are all very relevant to this conversation today. So, yeah, it's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be here with everyone today. And let's throw it over to David. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
hey, good to see you again. So, a little bit about me. I work in developer relations. I'm head of developer relations for Arc. So it's my job to make sure all of the developers going through our platform are happy, and if I can help them in any way, help them to find better jobs, then that's kind of all falls under my umbrella. A bit about my history. I started off in the software development field, so I've actually got about 20 years of software development. And then I kind of morphed into this technical recruiting role, and I've done that for a few years. So I've kind of seen both sides of the fence. So that kind of segued nicely into my role now, which is just helping developers with that whole process. So I've seen the recruitment side, I've seen the developer side. So yeah, hopefully that helps me help the developer community. I hope that gives you enough. I am in the UK. I'm not in London, but I thought it'd be nice for tourist reasons to have a bit of London in the background. Yeah, I'm in the UK.
I'm Lauren.
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren. Go ahead.
I'm Lauren from the Arc marketing team, like Christine, and I've also been managing the new Arc Elevate program, which is a hands-on program to help developers get hired faster. So basically, we just taught developers how to sell themselves better to employers. So that mix that marketing perspective with that developer perspective, and yeah, that's also what we get here today. So let's dive in, I guess, Christine.
Yeah, and so Lauren is also our social media manager. So we'll be talking a lot about social media here today. So any kind of, detailed tips I might be asking Lauren's advice on. So the conversation today is going to cover a range of topics, but we're going to focus the main theme today on personal branding. And that probably is like either a scary topic or a confusing topic to a lot of people out there. But it's something, marketers think a lot about branding. So I want to talk a little bit about what is branding, like, and why are we talking about this here today? So let me just throw a question to David. Okay, David, let's say you're a developer, you're really talented. Is that enough today to just kind of, if you're talking about someone in their career, is that enough just to be a good developer? Branding is probably not really relevant to them. Do you agree?
No, I wouldn't say it's not really relevant. I think it's becoming more and more relevant. And I think as developers becoming almost more like businesses, they've got to think like businesses. They've got to present themselves in a particular way. And I think branding is we all know it's important for businesses, but I think developers aren't quite aware that it's really important for them. And the world's going remote. We've been forced to, mainly because of the pandemic, but I think everyone's diving into this remote side of working, which means the market's opening up and that there's more opportunities there, and people are looking across the world for developers. So I think it's really starting to become important for developers to stand out, to stake their claim on who they are and what they do, because otherwise you're just going to blend in that community of developers. So I think it's becoming paramount, really. It's going to be the way that people are going to make a real difference in how they're seen by employers, recruiters, and anyone else, really.
Yeah. And so obviously I asked you that question because I kind of knew the answer, but I think a lot of people take it for granted, like branding, personal branding, this whole image, like it shouldn't be important if I'm a qualified, technically skilled developer, or any field really. But as you said, with remote work, it's becoming really crucial, because to me, like the core of what branding is really standing out. How do you stand out in a crowd, or in the remote space? This is the crowd, that's the entire world. So when we say what is branding, I mean, branding is a lot of things to a lot of people. And, my answer really is it's how you're going to stand out and how people are going to notice you in a crowded space. And as you were saying, it's even more important when it's coming to remote work, when you may be one out of thousands of applicants really trying to get your foot into the door. So branding becomes really crucial, as you said, whether it's your developer or even marketers. But today's topic is focused around developers. Lauren, as a fellow marketer, do you have anything to add about branding? I mean, there's so much we can say, but do you think it's relevant to everyone in today's world?
Yeah, I think it's relevant to anyone who's trying to get a job, because basically you're selling yourself. And if you don't know how to sell yourself and portray yourself as something unique in the market of millions of people looking for jobs, I think you'll fail. So I think it's really important. I was trying to remember, while you were talking about remote jobs and how many more applicants there are, I was trying to remember the stats of how many more remote applicants each job gets versus, or how a remote job, how many more applicants it gets versus an on-site job. And it's been a while since I've seen those. Do either of you recall? I think it was 100 times. It was a crazy number, 1,000 times more.
It's something like 50 times or 100 times the local applicants. And I think the number change. It depends on the job, right? It depends on the job and the company. But 50 times is a safe bet, I think.
I say 1,000. I don't know. Whatever it was, it was a lot more. So it matters even more to sell yourself and stand out from the crowd.
Yeah. So David, why? So we're talking about what is branding. Why do you think it's often overlooked as an important part of one's career, especially for developers? Is it just not knowing what the benefits are? Why is it something that you feel isn't as focused on as it should be?
Yeah, I think people misunderstand what branding really is, and there's the old jokes that people would say branding is not a logo, and so when a developer's thinking about it, thinking I don't have a logo for me. There's no logo for me. I'm me. So they're thinking about branding in the wrong terms, and yet what you have to really think of is what are the companies that have a brand that you may or may not know that you actually buy the brand rather than you buy the product. The product just happens to be something they do. But if you're it's going to be controversial, if you're really into Apple, you buy Apple products, but it doesn't really matter often what features the new iPhone has or what features the iWatch has. You buy the brand, you're buying that think differently, not the strapline as such, but you're buying the something. It's a way you feel about something, and it's so when you map that across then to developers, is if you've got a brand, it's what someone who interacts with you, when they leave that conversation, when they leave your profile, when they leave the interview, what's the lasting thing you left them with? What is that essence of you? Why would they come back to you specifically for that job or for something, to talk about some subject? And you've got to leave them with something that says, this is me, and that's your brand. It's what each person you interact with takes away. So I think people thinking about branding wrong in terms of it's something that only companies do. And I think more people are waking up to it a little bit more now and thinking, oh, it means I should be blogging, or it means I should be putting stuff out on social media. But I think people need to try and redefine what they think branding is, and then it'll all kind of fall into place about what your brand becomes, because lots of people won't know what their brand is just, you know, off the top of their head. It's something that evolves and creates itself in a way.
Yeah. I think one of the things for anyone listening who might be wondering, you know, what is my brand? Like how to start thinking about that question. One question you can ask yourself, I think, is what is your position within the industry? Okay, so if you're a marketer, am I a content creator? Am I a social media expert? Like within your industry, who are you? Because I think branding can be overwhelming if you just think of who am I? But if you start as a developer, start to ask you, are you a bootcamp guru? Are you a self-taught developer? I think you start to just think about within a group of your peers, you know, how do you position yourself as different from those people? So I think that kind of question, for those of you who haven't given this personal branding topic thought, you can start there and kind of think about, okay, where do I fit in and position myself?
Well, and this plays nicely with what we were just talking about, you know, there's so many more applicants to any role. And the question goes back to you guys really, and it's lots of people would apply for a marketing role, but what do you put on your resume? How do you define yourself on LinkedIn? Just marketing executive? But if there's 3 marketing executives, who's the best one for the job? And it depends on those niche elements. What are you focused on? What are you passionate about, more importantly? Because if this is purely to do with social media, maybe Lauren might be the person to go to. And if it was some other aspect of marketing that just didn't really excite Lauren, then maybe it's not the thing that Lauren would want to do. So as I think everything goes remote, I think people are starting to target more specifics. So you might not know what your brand is, but you might know what you're passionate about, and that could become your brand when they think about, are you someone who cares more about the code quality, and someone who cares about technical architecture, and you really want to write the right things, or are you someone who's really interested in security? And that can become your brand. You know, when they think of scaling their app, and they need to find someone who's really into scaling. And if that's your thing, regardless of the technology you're using, that almost becomes your thing. That's what the thing that people are going to remember when they leave that conversation, because otherwise it's just one developer after another applying for a job. Yeah. So you need to define who you are, and it takes some time to go away and think about, what do you really want to do? And I think when you do that, more exciting opportunities will spring up, because you're going after something you care about, something you're passionate about, and that will come across in interviews, it'll come across in your profiles as well.
Okay, maybe this is a little controversial, but it kind of reminds me of 100 years ago. We would probably be marrying someone who was in our town, right? Because the options were few, and maybe you didn't have to try very hard, because, you know, you had 3 people to choose from. And I think, you know, nowadays, you know, I'm a professional who was born in the US. I live in Taiwan. My husband's actually Taiwanese. Like, think of that compared to 100 years ago. And I'm not saying marriage and career is exactly the same, but I do think that there's some parallels when you're talking about remote work, because you have the entire globe at your disposal, and you're no longer trying to decide, am I the best fit for these 3 jobs in my local area? It's like, where am I the best fit if the entire world is really my oyster and I can work anywhere? So like, as you're saying, David, like it's that specialization, but it's also finding that better match for you maybe than you would have if you only had 3 options in front of you. And so, you know, finding a job where they really are looking for that security expert or the person who values code quality is going to be a better fit for you in the long run, you know, for your career satisfaction.
I'm still thinking about the marriage thing.
I'm not saying better or worse, but it was different 100 years ago, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about a silly video I watched today about someone complaining about online dating and how having too many options can make it harder in some ways. But I guess
that is true.
in the job world, I think it makes it easier though. Just figuring out where you fit. I think that's the hardest part. For me, I've been trying to build a personal website. I'm like, who am I as a marketer? I've been writing a lot of lists, and I think maybe I still haven't even figured it out for myself yet. But I think that's a good recommendation to start with. Like, write lists. Like, these are all the things I can do. These are my favorite things to do. These are the things I'm most passionate about. Like, this is who I want to be. Maybe things I've never done yet, and just start like circling the most interesting ones and build a kind of a vision for yourself and who you want to portray.
I don't know about you, because that's interesting. I don't know about you, but when I was at school a long time ago, but when I was
100
at
years ago,
school,
David?
yeah, dating was easy. So when I was there, they told you on your CV to always keep your options open. It was the way you picked, you know, the options in school, the way you wrote a CV. Always keep options as wide as possible. And I think that's the way everyone was taught for many, many years. Certainly here in the UK, that's the way everyone was taught. And I think I see that now, and it's so people define themselves as a programmer or software engineer, and it's that very generic. I'm keeping the door open. I don't want to say which technology because I want to be tech agnostic. I don't want to put myself in a box because I may want to leap out of that box around the corner. But I think what becomes more interesting, and I'd like to get your opinion on it, is it's my opinion that when people are being interviewed, you naturally put the candidate into a box. I think the interviewer always decides, oh, you're that kind of developer, or you're that kind of marketer, or you're that kind of. They're going to put you in a box and decide, oh, you're more front end leaning, you're back end leaning, you're this. And I wonder, you know, have we created this problem for ourselves? And I certainly rather think that I'd rather put myself in a box than have somebody else put me in the wrong box. You know, I'd rather choose my own box. And I think we're still keeping our options open because we're scared to define ourselves. And I think it's okay to change. What do you think?
I would say, I mean, you're the recruiter, so you have experience in that way. I think as a hiring manager, I think it's true that at least when you don't know someone at all, you absolutely put them in a box within 3 to 5 seconds of looking at their resume or looking at their LinkedIn. And I would say that there is a box of not having a box to put anyone in, someone that you just don't even notice, like, oh, there's, let's say, they just look, like you said, kind of average, or just they would be just a marketing generalist or something. And I would say that's a box, not having a box, I guess. And so those people definitely don't, they aren't likely to get, let's say, the interview chance, at least in our team, just because there's so many people out there. The people who stand out, at least in some way, are definitely going to be, for the most part, yeah, getting a chance to get an interview. So I don't know if that's true for every case, but at least it's my experience. I think that's true.
For me, on the recruiting side of it, is everyone's hiring people, and it's rarely just if ever, we're just hiring because we're hiring. People don't hire for no reason. There's always a specific reason, and they might be hiring a Node developer, but it's not just, it's never that generic. It's more, we've got a problem that we need to solve, and maybe, you know, we're about to start scaling this, and we need someone. So they want a Node developer, but if I came across a developer that had vast experience scaling apps in the past, that person goes to the top of the list because they've got that experience and they say they're passionate about that. That's what they do. I'm going to go to that person. And it's all too common to speak to developers and they say, well, I can do anything. If you just interview me, you'll find out I'm really good. And I say, coming from a development background, I can understand that. I've seen that. I know that that's probably true, but I don't have time to interview every single applicant that ever applies for every single job. You've got to use some criteria to get to the people you like. And if somebody's staking their claim and saying this is what I'm passionate about, they're going to get the interview. And it's only if they fail that I'm going to come back for those other people. So,
you know, David,
might...
this reminds me of that famous interview question that we talked about about 2 weeks ago. Remember your favorite interview question?
Why is this job open?
Why is the job open? Yeah. So why is the job open? Like, if you can, let's say, somehow ask that to the hiring manager or the recruiter, that may give you some information on whether or not you're a good fit. And I think that's like the other end of the spectrum. You have the specialization when it comes to personal branding, and you have the knowledge of what are they actually hiring for? What specific skill sets, and is that a match? So it really reminds me of what we talked about last week, which is, you know, about the job itself and knowing more about, you know, what they're truly looking for.
For me, it becomes almost a no-brainer though, because people are scared that they want to keep that net cast wide so that you get more opportunities. But if you were someone who really cares about code structure, you know, the architecture, and wanting to scale something, and you're really picky and you want to develop something not slowly, but you really care about that product, but that you're being interviewed by a company that says, I would just want to bang this out in 2 weeks and get it launched, and it's almost like against your nature. If you're not that kind of developer, you want to do things differently, then you're not going to be happy. It's not going to be a successful relationship. So wouldn't you be better to say, this is the sort of development I want to do, this is what I love and how I like to build things, and someone goes, that's what we need, we're at that stage, it's a different stage of this process, and now you've got a job and a project that you love, and that all of a sudden you resonate as a team, and that's surely that'll be a happier life.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll get less offers.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Did you have something to add, Lauren?
Yeah.
Oh, I would just love to rewind for a second to what you said. Your favorite interview question was, why is this role open in the company, right? So that actually reminds me of one of my favorite tips from one of our speakers that we've had at a previous ARC event. She's spoken a couple times, Lisa Smith. She's the engineering manager at Netflix. And she likes to say how in every single job description that you see, what you're seeing is a problem that company is trying to solve. And so when you are looking at that description, when you're applying, you have to think about that problem and show how you're the solution. So it's not like a lot of developers that I talk to, they just throw out thousands of resumes at a bunch of companies, they never get hired, and they're wondering why. But then those who spend time looking for that problem and that solution and really targeting specific companies that are a great fit for them, they're much more likely to get hired. Even it's not about volume, it's about finding that perfect fit. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Christine, with what you're...
No, that was great. Yeah. And you know, I think looking at it like a problem and like seeing whether or not you're the solution, it sounds funny, but like I think that's a really interesting perspective. No, I was just going to say, like, I want to move our conversation into some more specific or like concrete examples, because I think this might be really useful to our listeners today. So we're talking about what is branding, the importance, but are there any brands or individuals with strong personal brands that you can kind of use to explain why, you know, what's working about what they're doing? Or I think that might bring some, you know, concreteness to this conversation that will help a lot of people who are still, you know, figuring out how to do it themselves. So does anyone have an example off the top of their head?
I've got a few examples of famous people that I can think of where you know their brand immediately, certainly in developer circles. So I think when I was coding, and I used to follow a guy, Misko Haveri. I probably get his name pronunciation completely wrong, but he's the creator of Angular. But I used to follow some of his, they were like the clean code talks or something like that on Google. But he used to talk about how to build apps in scalable ways, and how to organize your code to make it more testable, and what the benefits are of that. And you can see that was part of his brand. It was very measured in the way he would develop anything. So as someone who at that time I was really interested in how to build scalable applications, and I really cared about the code side of it because that was my job, and so I used to follow him intensively. But now I look at people like again, I'm going to make a mess of his name, Peter Levels, the guy who launched Remote OK and Nomad List, and he's famed for doing 12 startups in 12 months, and that's a very different approach. It's very much let's get this done, and there's no right or wrong way. Misko's very successful from Google, and Peter's very successful too. It's a different approach, but you wouldn't go to Misko with the same problem as you'd go to someone like Peter. It would be a very different brand. You know what you're getting. It would be a different conversation entirely.
Those are great examples. Lauren, anything that comes to mind for you, and whether it's marketers or developers or anything in between?
Yeah, I guess nothing in particular right now. How about you?
Yeah, no, I was like, I have so many from the marketing space. So, I mean, we're seeing a trend on Twitter where people actually put the blank guy. So like I'm looking at one right now as an example, KP. So his name's KP. He's a program director at Beyond Deck. And he says the build in public guy, because he wants to be known as his personal brand as the guy that is very clearly building in public. So he's all about no code. And in his profile, it says that right away. Because you can kind of think about that's how people say like, hey, Lauren, have you heard about KP? And then your answer will be, oh yeah, it's that build in public guy. So he's making it super obvious what his personal brand is. And I think, that's not going to work for everybody. It might not work for developers. I mean, it can. Usually on LinkedIn, you tend to do something a little bit more formal, but I think you're seeing a trend like that in a lot of marketers or creative people, is just spelling it out for you. This is who I am. So I've seen that with some people who work at Product Hunt. I've seen, the social proof guy. I don't really know what that means. Someone who's always showing social proof, but I think people just spelling it out, I think is something that we're seeing quite a lot of. So, I mean, maybe that's personal branding to the other extreme. They're just saying it too obviously, but I like it.
The interesting one for developers is to go and have a look at their LinkedIn profile right now, or after we finish talking, preferably. But if they looked at their LinkedIn profile, and I'd be willing to bet there's quite a good percentage of people who will have programmer, software developer, software engineer, and I need to keep reading. I need to spend more energy. I need to invite you to an interview. How do I, so I can find out who you are and what you like and what you do, and then we get into an interview and you're trying to pull this information out. So it begs the question, at what stage should we start telling people who I am? Because at the minute, the interviewer, whoever they might be, a recruiter or an employer, has to spend a lot of time and energy to hopefully get to the right, and if they don't ask the right questions, they won't get the right information. So we're just hoping it magically appears. And that's where I think, you should have the t-shirt. So in a way,
don't you feel like developers are, like you said, it kind of seems like, well, I want to get a job. There may be people who are at the beginning of their careers, they think, well, if I am more general, then they won't toss me out as quickly. But are you saying that it's actually, they're going to skip over you anyways?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for someone who's just starting out. And I think my advice for anyone starting out would be to taste everything, try everything. How do you know which technology you love? But then that's looking at it on a macro level, that you should eventually try everything, because this is a long career, hopefully. So you should try everything in the first few years, but you can't try everything every day and every week and every month. So you've got to start somewhere. And I don't think people should be ashamed of having no experience yet. That just means in 2 or 3 years' time, you're the potential leaders of what you're doing if you do it right. So just be public about what you're putting your heart and soul into right now. And when I make the joke about, you should have the tattoo that says this is my brand, I should be careful that maybe it isn't a tattoo, maybe it is a t-shirt, because your brand is allowed to change. You're allowed to change. You might do security stuff for 5 years and then realize I don't like this anymore. I know lots of developers who started out as back-end developers and then just said, I'm bored. I want to move to the other side of the fence and do front-end development. And they do that for a few years, and then grass is always greener. We go back, and sometimes it's full stack, but then it's okay to jump. But whatever you do, go for it. Do it wholeheartedly. Because that's how you're going to stand out. And if you want to jump from one side to the other, if you want to change brand, then that's where there's an endless queue, I see. I don't know whether you've seen this yourself, but everyone says, I'd like to learn that if you just pay me while I learn. There's millions of those people. Everyone wants that. But if you start saying, no, I'm going in this direction, and here's the evidence, here's how I'm going to get there, regardless of whether it's you that pays me to get there, I'm going to do this. That's inspirational. Everyone wants to support that. That's a proactive person.
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking about branding as if it's one thing, but like I think it depends on the times in your career. It can sometimes be your skills. It can sometimes be your mission. Like I'm on a mission to solve, there's someone I follow on Twitter whose mission is to solve aging in dogs. I'm a dog lover. And so I'm like, wow, that's a cool mission. They're just basically trying to help dogs live forever. So her mission is her personal brand. There could be your image. It could be something about how you look, how you present yourself. It could be your values. It could be your passion. So I don't think you have to have all of them as part of your personal brand, but you can kind of pick, is it your passion now that's really your defining characteristic, or is it your skills? Is it your industry? You have some options there. So you don't only have to think of one, you have a few things to consider.
Think about buying a car. It's when you buy a car, when I bought, I don't know, a Volvo, you're buying safety. If I buy a Lamborghini, I'm buying speed. Or the looks, what you're buying. How does someone who meets you either via your profile or via your CV or in an interview, how do they know what they're buying? And it's how do you present yourself? And that comes across in lots of ways: how you talk, how you dress, what you write down, all those sorts of things.
I think this underscores a really critical part in the remote space, which is trust. It's a lot harder to trust someone you've never met. I mean, there are ways that are making it easier, but the brand is essentially lending credibility to the person you say you are, or the person on your resume. And the brand, as you can see evidence, whether that's, we'll talk about this a little later in the talk, but like evidence of your brand could be blog, could be social media, could be, videos of you doing work. Basically, in the remote space, trust is critical for them to even consider you or eventually want to work with you. So without a personal brand, you have a really big gap between someone, starting to trust you and then being willing to hire you. So it's something, at Arc that we're really aware of. People are even more skeptical of hiring someone in a different country than them because they just don't know the school they went to. They don't know the networks of those people. So building that personal brand becomes even more important with, for global talent.
Well, it's interesting. It goes back into, because you guys are the experts more than I am in this, and you market Arc, the platform. This mission to help developers get great remote careers. But how do you market that as a business? Is it just standard stuff, or how do you do it? Is it trying to find what differentiates you? How do you begin to market a business? Because that's how we should be marketing people. It's yeah. And is it that differentiation that's key?
I think there's always, oh, go ahead, Lauren.
We were just talking about what makes Arc unique, and we were talking about the humanity that we have within this company, like when we interact with our developers and just the human side of the company. And it also reminds me of just personal branding too. Like, you on paper is a list of skills, but you as a person, that's what makes you special. The human side of things make you memorable, make people drawn to you and want to continue to work with you. So I think that relates between a company as well as just a candidate looking for a job, just being memorable and adding that human side so people know who you are and want to be around you. And that's what we hope to do with Arc, of course, as well. I think that's, yeah.
I think when it comes to marketing as a whole, I mean, there's a whole, some of you may have seen like a funnel, like you're going from attracting people, letting them know Arc even exists. And so the same applies to you as a person, right? Even knowing you exist as a person. And then down through, someone being willing to use your product or maybe engage with you and start talking with you. So you could think of those at the same level. And then the brand, the really personal things is like when you really start working together or when you really buy the product and you start to love it. That's where those personal things, if you don't have them and if you don't have the authentic, you said you were this, and if you really aren't that, then that person's going to leave or that person's going to say, all right, I don't want to work with you any longer. So I think you need all of those components. You need to be able to attract someone with your, the build in public guy, that sort of thing first attracts you. But you have to be able to back that up with, that's really who you are who you say you are, and hopefully your personality and things like that do support it. So, I mean, marketing is complex in some ways. You have to do all those things consistently, but you could boil it down to those kind of principles. So what Lauren was saying about being human, we try to make sure, like even through events like this, people can see that Arc, we are not just some robotic corporation, like we're real people that genuinely care about what we say we care about, and you can ask us any questions, and we're really accessible, and we genuinely care about the success of people within our network. And and with even if you're not in our network, we still hope that you can get a great job through remote work. So I think it's a good example to use Arc, because that's something we're so familiar with.
That funnel idea though is interesting, and maybe that's the way people should think about it. And there was a key phrase that Lauren mentioned there about I forget the way you phrased it, but making people want to spend time with you was the essential idea. And that's cool on a you think as you're talking to people, you want to behave, you want to talk and present yourself in a way that makes people want to spend time with you and want to work with you in the future, and that's where you get a job. But it's also, if we go back to that attraction part of the funnel at the top, it's how can you present yourself on paper or on online in some way that makes people want to spend time with you, because that's essentially the problem with that top of the funnel is lots of people are sending that bit of paper in, and we've got to whittle that down to a manageable number. And if you don't make people want to spend time with you, and it's a real investment to jump on a call for half an hour, if you test and things like that to make sure they're the right person, that's an investment that someone's got to make to talk to each person. So how can you make people want to spend time with you via paper?
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
I think that we in the Elevate program, Lauren and I, and mostly Lauren, since she was the program manager, we worked with developers to really craft like the headline and the elevator pitch of like, how do you catch someone's attention if you only have 3 seconds, 10 seconds, something like that. And it's not easy. It takes all of these things we've been talking about. It takes knowledge of yourself, knowledge of who you are in the market. I think that, being part of the Arc community is something that can help you with that. If you're not sure where to get started, how do I do a headline? How do I do, any of these kinds of elevator pitches? Hopefully, we can't help you right here, but you can join the Arc community and David will answer your question. I promise you. We can help work with you because we truly believe as marketers that is a missing piece for a lot of developers. And we want to help people with that because it's just it's not simple, but it's a small thing that can just make such a huge difference. The leverage of a clear headline, clear elevator pitch to actually attract people is just immense.
Oh yeah, but I think this is where it's not like you don't get good advice from other developers. You do, asking anyone. But it's interesting to talk to you both about marketing, because the problem with when developers are trying to find jobs is they've got a marketing problem. They haven't got a coding problem. So their answer is to go to other developers and ask them. Maybe they've got a good job, and it's how did you get there? Okay, I understand that. But many people, for their jobs, it might happen via, you know, a network of people they know. Maybe it's via Arc. Maybe it's, but there's many ways that people arrive at that job. But in order to increase your chances, maybe you should be talking to marketers and people that know how to present things, because that you wouldn't have a business without a sales department and a marketing department, and then there's the coders as well. So if we're starting to if we're starting to think of ourselves as businesses, then we need a marketing department. You need a sales department. You need to have these extra bits in order to present yourself.
Like you could think of your own profile as like an advertisement for you as someone that's going to work somewhere. Really, that's really what it is. It's an ad about yourself and what you can do. And you should think about it from that perspective.
And if you have, you know, a sales department and a marketing department, it makes the office party a lot more fun.
I'm just going to add a link in the chat here because I think it's really useful. We're gonna move into this topic of like how to actually communicate your brand. Communication itself is a huge topic. Let me see if I can share my screen. I don't know if it will let me. Let's see. All right, let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, the whole screen.
Okay, I hope YouTube Live can see it. So if you can't see on YouTube Live, no worries, but I've linked it in the chat. But I just wanted to highlight, this is a thread from Harry's marketing examples, but this is something we're going to talk a lot about, and we can work with you on if it's something you're not familiar with. We're happy to do that. But basically, here's an example of, like, imagine it's your headline, and it's something like, Trello lets you work more collaboratively and get more done. Okay, it's okay. But this is, you know, a better one. Work collaboratively, get more done. So communicating your, like, the essence of what you do, whether you're a brand or a person, is really critical. I really encourage you to read through these examples that really highlight, you know, how good communication can really sell something and sell yourself. All right, so I just wanted to share that because it's one of my favorite examples. It's Harry's marketing examples are all good, but that one in particular is one of my favorites.
Well, it maps quite well, you know, back to the cars problem talking about earlier. You wouldn't put up just a sign saying cars. You know, some outlets are selling cheap cars, some are selling prestige cars, some are selling, and it's that's where that message of programmer doesn't go far enough. It doesn't make you want to spend time with that person, as Lauren so eloquently put it. But so how can you make people want to spend time with you? And maybe you do have to put some people off talking to you, but I think you'll only be putting off the people that you probably weren't interested in. Not you didn't like them, but it was the wrong job for you. That wasn't where you were going and what you're passionate about. And,
I feel like the two main things I learned when I first started working in marketing were, first, you really want to target a specific audience. You can't just want, like before I thought maybe if you can just resonate with everyone in the world, then everyone wants your product. But that's just not how it works, because you can't resonate with everyone at the same time. You can't be the perfect fit for everyone. So you really have to target things. And then the other from the examples you showed me reminded me, Christine, mostly of what you've taught me working at Arc, is just say things with as few words as possible. Like, be concise. If someone in your job interview asks you, like, how did you solve this problem? You don't want to use 10,000 words to say it. You want to use as few words as possible to say the most impactful statement you can. So those two things, like target carefully and also use as few words as possible. And I think that applies to candidates looking for jobs as well.
Absolutely.
For those developers, though, don't be so concise that it's a one-word answer. I get
very important.
I get lots of that.
Medium-sized answers are the right ones.
Do you have experience with React? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A middle ground.
We're talking about how to communicate your brand. Of course, I've been talking about the Arc community a lot. You can visit it at Arc.dev. Anyone's welcome to join. You just need an Arc account, free to join. So we were talking about personal branding with the community. And so I want to give people really specific examples. So there was a member of our community, Merrick. He had some great ideas of things that he does to work on his personal brand. And he admits that, you know what, he wish he had more time to spend on it. So you know that it does take a bit of time, but hopefully getting a few ideas about how you can do this might spark some inspiration about what you can do aside from just starting a blog. So I don't know if you've ever heard of our sister company, Code Mentor. So Code Mentor is a good place if you're kind of looking to figure out what you're good at. You can do some mentorship. I'm sure there's platforms or spaces where you can do that. Code Mentor is just one of them. So that's one idea of if you're just trying to figure out, you know what am I most passionate about? You can make some money on Code Mentor and do some mentoring sessions. You can, it sounds a little bit weird, but you can actually screencast some of your work. So let's imagine you're doing 15-minute long videos of implementing a feature or doing a prototype solution or debugging a bug. Take some videos of you actually doing that. And I think as you kind of create those videos, you can put them on YouTube, put them on social media, and just share what you're learning and what you're doing. Those are some really great ways. I know the marketing team, we love to use Loom. Loom is a great way, a great tool that can help you kind of record what you're doing and share that with the world. It doesn't have to be high production value. It's just showing, what you know and your approach to something. Contributing to open source, high profile open source projects. A blog is a tried and true, but try to find an interesting angle, not just repeat what people are doing. I think you'll see a lot of repetitive stuff. Just try to find your own angle and answer to something. And then, a lot of communities, if you can join a community or a meetup group or, online communities or in person, if you're able to, those are a few different ways to kind of start thinking about your brand, practicing that in the real world. Anything else come to mind, David or Lauren, for, how you can start communicating your personal brand to the world?
Side projects, we've talked a bit about this. A lot of the mentors that joined our Elevate program discussed like how when they're looking for candidates, they look at their side projects. It just shows that they're passionate about development. It also shows that they can set aside time to get something interesting done. So it shows some time management skills. I know, David, you probably have a bit to say about interesting side projects and how that improves employability and also is fun, probably.
Well, I think anyone wants to hire someone who is passionate about what they do. So if you, regardless of what you do for your side project, if you're working outside of work, that's on something that's code as well, that shows that you love this. So regardless of what you actually do, it's still a huge plus point anyway. I certainly tell people new to development to start a side project because it focuses you on, and I say start one project and commit to that on a daily basis, because the problem with hiring people new to coding is they haven't worked on a larger code base. That's why contributing to open source is so highly regarded, because you've worked on a bigger project with people in a distributed environment, and it shows more maturity in the coding practice. But yeah, if you can commit to this one project and commit to it daily. I'm a big fan of the Gary Vaynerchuk idea of document what you do, and I think lots of developers are trying to just show the wonderful, glorious result of what they've created, whereas actually the journey to creating something is of more interest. If someone was to tell you, oh, I developed this whole big application, I never had a single problem once, it was just rattled it off, and no one believes you. Everyone has problems all day, but to see someone having problems and solving all those problems, you're the type of person that gets things done. So I'd encourage you to start the side project and blog daily. It doesn't have to be big, long posts, just a paragraph a day to say what you're working on, what you're struggling with. And then it almost generates a conversation itself. Other people will offer ideas to you, but you're networking while you're doing it, and also showing that you've got an interest in this, you're working on it out of hours, and you're the type of person that gets things done, gets problems fixed. What more could anyone ask?
David, I know that you, oh, go ahead, Lauren, sorry.
I think documenting yourself like that is a really good way to also keep track of like the way you work, because a lot of the time in interviews people will ask you like how do you solve a difficult problem, and that's a hard question to answer. And if you have this kind of documentation, you can go back and think about like, this is what I did when I encountered this problem, and be able to do your storytelling of your development better.
I liked the idea of recording yourself, because I think certainly for permanent positions, if it was, can a contractor please come in and fix this for a few weeks, that's a different relationship in many ways. But when someone's committing to working with you long term, any way you can give them a window to what it's like to work with you, from your personality all the way through to how you like to code. You're all going to have different opinions on how to do things, but you start to get an idea. I could work with this person, and I can imagine sitting at a desk with this person, or you know, in a remote environment, coding together on a problem. I think that's more than 50% of the problem half the time, is finding someone you want to spend more time with. We're back to marriage again.
Back to marriage. You know, we've been thinking a lot at ARC about, you know, how we can simplify the recruitment process, the interview process for companies and developers, because there's a lot of time spent and wasted in that process. And we're, you know, always thinking of ideas we can use, ways we can use video to try to make that process better. I wonder if companies are interested. And David, as a recruiter, maybe you have any insight, like if people do those sorts of videos, would they be useful as part of your profile or part of your, you know, application process, like maybe a video cover letter or something like that? Have you seen that, or would you recommend people try that?
Yeah, I've seen videos as part of you know, the application process. I've done asynchronous interviews. Again, the phrase I like to use for this is nobody hires anyone they don't like. It just doesn't happen. So I mean, that can be a scary thought to some, because they say, oh, I don't come across well on camera. But if you can try and experiment with it and become a little bit more comfortable. Most people aren't comfortable recording. As soon as you hit record, you know, your mouth dries up and it all goes to pot. But if you can become a little bit more comfortable, for all those applicants that sent me a video, those are the ones I remembered, because it was a more human connection. And if you look at, as a recruiter, if you're looking at applicants over and over and over all the time, they start to blend, and you know, how do you remember an applicant? It's very difficult. Whereas when you see a video, you put the face to that profile, and
yeah,
they're a real human, and that's what we need, isn't it?
As we're saying, like we're talking this whole, you know, hour-long hangout, we've been talking about branding and why it matters. Is it going back to that initial point of like, the brand is what makes you stand out from the crowd and makes you unique. And it's so important when, you know, as you said, as a recruiter, you need to have someone needs to stand out to get your attention. But as you continue along your career, you want to become, you know, someone that people reach out to. And that's a benefit that we haven't really talked about for personal branding. It's like, it's not only important when you're applying to jobs, you want to get to a point in your career where people are coming after you and really approaching you with opportunities, jobs, you know, a variety of things that you, because you've built that personal brand, you're getting offered, and you may not have if you were just some software engineer generalist who hasn't really worked on that specialization and making yourself stand out.
Yeah, I think the you know, you're starting to see lots more companies now that even while you work there, they encourage you to have a side project. And I think where that was always thought about in a negative light, like, you know, you might be leaving us one day. Now it's seen almost the exact opposite, seen in a very positive light, because these are the people that are passionate about what they do. And so where we were, I think it was the first question, how important is branding? This is where I think if you don't have one, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to to get started or make further steps, because other people are starting to define themselves in this way, and they're making themselves memorable by their, blog posts or their videos that they're sharing, all those things. It all goes together to make this big picture. And I think that's why it's easy for developers, once they get a few years of experience, you don't need to rely on the interview. You get that sense of who they are from what they've done in the past and how they've presented themselves. So yes, you might not be able to do that in the professional, in an employed environment, but you can use all of those same tools to build that brand even before you get your first job.
Yeah. Now, David, I was going to ask you a question earlier as someone, yourself. I know that you're very active on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Do you have a, beginner's guide of like where you think people should focus? If you had to pick one, would you say, put your effort on LinkedIn over Twitter? Or do you have any sense of, for a developer who might be starting out, is there a channel that you'd recommend first if you can't do everything at once?
I would say find the channel that resonates with you the most. And when I say that, I don't mean choosing LinkedIn versus Twitter versus whatever. It's more a case of, if you're, great on camera, start doing videos. You should do all, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn or TikTok, just do those. If you're great at writing, write. But I would encourage you to, you'll find that one easy. And I've found, I thought writing was the thing I liked to do and was good at. And it became very easy for me to just do the posts. It's just as the thoughts entered my brain each day, out they went. And the hurdle for me was the video side of it. But then you do a few of them and you become accustomed to it, and it gets easier. So I would say start off with whatever resonates with you first, but then start to try a few other bits. And you can do you can start then to build an audience in a way that the audience might come in via your video content, but they'll go and read your blog later where you've mentioned you are talking about this in more detail over there. So try them all. It's the same with coding, I guess. Try them all. But for me, LinkedIn was the first one I really started with, and where I probably placed most of my time. But I think it's also important to remember, if you're blogging, if you're talking about things, developers tend to blog and talk in places where developers hang out.
Yeah.
But try to keep in your mind, you're trying to attract employers and you're trying to attract recruiters, and that might not be where they hang out. So think about where your audience hangs out and go there.
I would say, I think, as you said, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it is, I think try what works for you. I would say, and still explore. Like, I didn't have a Twitter account. I say I made one in 2018. So I was late to the game. But, I didn't use Twitter for quite a while. And, don't be afraid of experimenting. So I would say go where you're comfortable, but also for me, Twitter is still a new space for me. I'm still trying to figure it out compared to Facebook, which I had an account back in 2005, so it's just a totally different thing. Just because I'm comfortable with Facebook doesn't mean I should only be there. Obviously, the people I'm going to reach on Facebook, it's limited to my family and friends from high school, right? So I would say play around with the channels. Don't be, don't feel like you have to pick one and only stick to it. David likes to tell us in the marketing team, just do everything, do all of them. That's because, that's his marketing approach, which there's definitely some validity to that. Giving something a try and then seeing what works and what you like to do the best. So you don't have to pick one and stick with it. Yeah.
Well, I shied away from Instagram for quite a long time because I didn't feel like it mapped to what I was doing. I'm talking about programming. It doesn't really map to a picture, but all these platforms have lots of different tools now. So like Instagram stories. And as soon as I started doing Instagram stories, that became more popular than the other networks I was using. And you realize I'd made up this impression in my brain of where my customers were. And I think you don't know where they are, is the truth. So just try a few things and see what what happens? You know, you could be the next TikTok star. Lauren's going to be, I'm sure.
Yeah, Lauren, she has dreams of TikTok fame.
I just lurk on that. I know David's the only real talker here.
This has been a lot of fun. You know, I promised I would only take an hour of all of your time today, so we're just coming up on 1 hour. We do plan to do these remote dev live events regularly. Our next event will be a bit bigger. We will have a guest speaker, and not just the ARC team, although I love hanging out with the ARC team. David will be talking to Buffer's Marcus. He is the head of engineering at Buffer. And so we're really excited for that event. That will be about 2 weeks from now, a little less than 2 weeks from now. So we'll be sharing more information on our Twitter, Arc.dev, as well as within the Arc community. So if you'd like to join, we'd love to have you all there. And so we'll go more in depth about, you know, his experience at a top remote company. You know, and I think there's gonna be a lot to learn from that session. So, you know, this is just one of many great events that we'll be planning in the near future. So we hope to see everyone at our next event. And so again, you know, you can visit us at Arc.dev, join the community if you'd like, and you can talk to David, Lauren, and I anytime. So anything you'd like to add as we kind of wrap up, David or Lauren?
For me, I think just you can join me in the community. If you've got any questions, I'd love to chat. But failing that, I'm on most social media, and you can find me wherever you want to find me. And if I can answer some questions, I'd be delighted. But yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone.